A special edition of What Does the Bible Say? And this is a weekly religious television broadcast, and it's live into the 2 states area, Virginia and North Carolina. And then, of course, we also have people who are watching live with us tonight from different states. We're live on the internet right now on YouTube. You can go to What Does the Bible Say on YouTube, or type in Johnny Robertson YouTube. It will come up. Now tonight, this is a special edition. I have with me tonight, this is Mr. Garrett Dillard. And just so everybody knows, now people watching on YouTube, they don't know, right? Exactly. So Mr. Garrett Dillard, he's local to this area, and we've got a lot of local events right now that we're trying to have conversation about. We were talking before the broadcast, a lot of people have opinions, a lot of people like to complain, but what they don't usually like to do is sit down and have conversation. So he's going to give us a little bit of talk about himself, but I just want everybody to know he is local to the community. He's an educator. You have your degree in, what is education administration?
Social sciences, and then went on and got a degree in education administration.
So he's a local citizen, he's an educator. I believe he's maybe on the Deacon board at St. John Missionary Baptist. Yes, and so we wanted him to come on and have this conversation because you do make Facebook videos, and so I will say, he and I met on the golf course, so, you know, big plug to like networking when you're golfing. But I would see Mr. Dillard talking on Facebook, and one of the things, I'll tell you, I saw one of your older videos that I really appreciated, and just the general comment that you were making was, you said, if you got a job that needs doing, and you know somebody could do a good job, but they're going to be a bit expensive, and you say, you look over at him, you know he's having a hard time, so he'll do it for like no cost at all. You said that is robbing a community member, and I really appreciated that.
Yes, sir. And
so right now we're having a lot of local violence, and one of the things that you said about your comments on local violence was you said, you know, it's not going to be white-black issue, anything like that. It's a violent issue.
Absolutely.
So one more thing that we would like to say for Mr. Dillard is he did author a book within the last year, and so if you get with him on Facebook, I'm sure he can have some more information for that. So Mr. Dillard, you tell us a little bit about, you have experience already working with communities trying to calm things down, and for people who are local, we're talking about Sandy Level, Logtown. So can you tell us a little bit about some of that experience?
Yeah. Well, first of all, appreciate you, inviting me to come on. Got your message today, and just appreciate it. And we're just in a difficult time, and I think we have to. I'm a solution guy, and I believe too many times we get focused on the problem or who is the problem, but we have to focus on a solution. And you mentioned the Sandy Level community, that's where I'm from, that's home, it will always be home. And, in years past, we had some pretty serious issues in Sandy Level. And, just watching young guys, whether it was drugs or, getting killed in different ways. But eventually the community came together and we organized a Stop the Violence Walk. I was living in Greensboro at the time, and the goal was if we could just get 75 people to come to this event, talk about violence, maybe we can make a difference. And ironically, the first time we had about 300 people show up, and everybody's like, wow. But it became a prideful thing because we talked about stopping the violence, and as a community, for 8, 9, 10 years or so, went without any acts of violence by a citizen of Sandy Level or in the Sandy Level community. And we began to take pride in that, and I think that's a part of it. You have to take pride, in yourself and your community and your hometown, your family name, all that stuff, and I think all those things matter. But, we also involved the sheriff, and I think that's important because there are some legal conversations that needed to be had. There's also some the community needs to know that they can communicate with the police officers and sheriffs and share things with them discreetly so that if there's an issue that maybe is on the rise, the sheriff and, of course, here in the city, the city chief can, get a head start on those things. Getting the elected officials involved. Oftentimes crime is a result of just, I don't want to use the word boredom, but when there's nothing to do, people congregate, people get together, people get involved in mischievous things. An idle mind is the devil's workshop. So it's important to provide things for, communities to do. And, some of the other things is we highlighted the talent in the community. Sometimes we you go to church, you hear people sing, but you don't really think, well, man, they're really like an outstanding singer. So highlight those things, and build confidence in those individuals and highlight the positive attributes of the community versus constantly focusing on the negative. And, one other thing I would say is that, we focused on addressing the issues that lead to violence.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes people want to say, let's stop the violence. But it's not really the violence, what's causing the violence.
Right.
Is it
that
drugs?
Is a symptom.
Correct. Yeah. Is it drugs? Is it alcohol? Is it mental health? Is it, just, social relationships? What is the cause of violence? You have to address those things to really attack the violence. So that's kind of the Sandy level community, and, we're just, very proud of our community.
Well, for people, like we said, you coming from over from Greensboro, I don't really know the full extent of how far and wide Sandy level Logtown would be known. My parents actually live out that way.
Okay.
And so there's like this, it's a 4-way stop sign. And it's just kind of a little story, but there was a guy who, and there's no telling what all he was selling out there, but when I would pass him, I just was like, just started driving, I didn't want any trouble.
Yeah.
He would sell watches and knives and radios, and I was in my brother's pickup truck, and I knew I didn't want to fool with anything that was going on, so I kind of stopped, looked one way, I squealed those tires, man, because it's like I knew I was in Sandy level.
Well, when you want to do a show on that guy, let me know, and I'll come in and we can talk specifically about him, and it's unfortunate.
But really, it's been cleaned up, is my point. Like, you can go through there, and, it's like where before I was only 16.
Okay.
I didn't want to, like, as far as a car was involved, I didn't want to get in trouble with anything.
Oh,
so it was like, but you can go through there now. So,
absolutely.
Everybody who's going to be living in there is going to appreciate efforts to clean it up. And so, like for people, I was saying, I don't know how far and wide in North Carolina Logtown, Sandy level would be, but for people who are watching online, you think about one of your worser spots. I mean, it was getting pretty rough in there, and so Mr. Dillard was one of the individuals, like he said, organizing, working with the police, elected officials, things like that. And I do appreciate what you said to go in on your own. Like I didn't even have to solicit that, but that was something that I wanted to talk about. Is a lot of people come out with just very vague statements.
Correct.
Stop the violence.
Correct.
And it's like, we always had this thing about my dad, when my brother was little, he would tell him, be good, and my brother would say, I don't know if I can be good.
Yeah.
Well, that's a very, very open-ended term. So one of the things that you said was, obviously, idle hands, devil's workshop. Mm-hmm. But for you to key in on just that, I mean, that is one on its own, but really, it's a very uncommon thing for people to go ahead and come out against and say alcohol and narcotics playing a big role.
And it is, and it's unfortunate because we do have to acknowledge, like, the causes.
Yeah.
And that's in any violent situation. And mental health is a major issue. And if we can acknowledge how much they contribute to violence, I think we could put those things out in the forefront and begin addressing those things, because oftentimes, stuff happens and then we look back and say, well, we should have seen the signs of these things, but we've got to start addressing those things, up front, because we know that all of those could very well lead to violence at some point in time.
Right. I believe the statistic is about 30% of domestic violence cases are going to involve alcohol to some degree. Mm-hmm. And so it's a thing to be warned about. It's not really something that gets preached from the pulpits anymore. And so that would be a question. Do you mind now if I give the community a little bit about what prompted our discussion tonight, just some of the headlines? So this is what we're dealing with right now in our local community. We had a Mexican restaurant where I don't really know what time of night it was, but we had a shooting where individuals were killed. These were some of the men that were involved in it. And then this is at a local restaurant, in a neighborhood. Well, this is happening in the middle of the night, and then it spills over. And so this is something I would like to talk about. It spills over, I believe, from the restaurant over to a gas station, and more shooting takes place. And so Mr. Dillard made one of the statements where he was saying this is not like a white-black thing, this is a violent thing. And so even in our more local news, it's just all over the place. Yeah. This man is in all kinds of news stories right now. But the big thing that I want to talk about in just a second, he's involved in some form of a child abduction case that was going on through the internet, basically soliciting, he's 21, soliciting these 12-year-old girls and things like that. And that's the big thing. Mm-hmm. These guys, they're young men, Mr. Hairston and then Mr. Johnson, they're only 19, they're 20.
Right.
So here's what I would like to say. Mm-hmm. what would you say to people who are going to be communicating with the young men? Like, how are we really going to make headway? Because I think what they're hearing maybe is the vagueness, or maybe they would say inconsistency. So what do you think about these younger guys? Because when you're 19, man, that is very early to, and this other man, 21, very early to start having trouble. So how do you work with some of these people? Because, I mean, some folk, here's what I'm really asking you, how do you get in their ear? Because a lot of people, they're just like, hey, I'm doing my thing, and if it involves a little bit of crime, this is what they're going to do.
And it's a really, really good question. And I think you have to look at communities where crime is not as prevalent.
Okay.
Look at the resources that those communities have. You know, that they're going to have a YMCA on this corner, a rec center on that corner. They're going to have a lot of students, you know, who are involved in various activities. They're going to have, you know, gyms are full of parents who are working out and exercising, and, you know, the alcohol and drug use is not as prevalent in those communities where crime doesn't exist. You know, the job market is going to be more flourishing. You're going to have jobs of all types, and people are going to get, you know, good salaries and good wages. And so I think, you know, here in Martinsville, we have some things that are against us that we have to, as a community, say that we need to fix these things. Okay. Because people can lose hope, and to work hard all week and to get a paycheck for $300, $400, and at the end of the month you make $1,500, $1,600, and your bills are $1,400. You know, you lose hope, and you look for ways to maybe, you know, drink away those hopes, or smoke away those hopes, or find ways to supplement, you know, your salary. Or parents have to work 2 jobs, and parents are working 2 jobs, and kids are home by themselves, and they get, you know, caught up into things. And, you know, so there's a lot of factors that play into that. And I think some of it is the nature of our community. Okay. So we have to, you know, work on fixing those things. Yeah. I think, you know, we have to make sure that, you know, as parents, you know, we're getting educated about, you know, the drugs and the violence. I used to say years ago that all parents should have to get like a certification before you can walk out with that child, because, you know, you have a child and nobody ever like gives you advice as a parent, like how to raise a child and do these things. And, you know, so I think, you know, that's another area. But as far as what I would say to these young men is that life is more than just that one moment of excitement, more than just that, you know, adrenaline flowing and, you know, 2 guys, you know, going up against each other. Man, you want to be able to live. And I used to tell, you know, kids all the time, you want to be able to, you know, live your life without something being addicted to something, or, you know, being in jail and you're constantly being controlled by somebody or something else. You know, I think that's what we want to tell them. But we got to get beyond the talk, and we have to give them opportunities. Okay. If we don't provide opportunities for them, the talking means nothing. Yeah. You know, if I'm sitting at home all day, I have nowhere to go, nothing to do, my mind's going to wander, and I may eventually get into something. So I think that's a start for us, is to, you know, upgrade things that we have in this community. Okay. Now you were talking about, I agree. Yeah. Now I don't have kids yet, but I agree with you on that. You need to go through something that gives you a certification to say, I'm ready to have this baby. But I want to come back to that, but I do. And I say that, and I hope nobody, you know, takes offense to that. But I think that, you know, anything that we do, it's okay to get some training, just like you get a driver's license. Right. You become an educator, you become a minister, you know, you get any other jobs, you get training. But as a parent, you know, we just have a child and we go parent. And we oftentimes, you know, learn on the job, but it would be nice to, you know, for all of us, you know, even myself, I've struggled as a parent, especially someone who grew up in a house without a father. So I've had to learn on the fly, and I've made my mistakes. Okay, well, I think that's fine. Like, you know, you're saying, would hope that nobody be upset by it, but, you know, at some point we got to hear it from somebody to say, you know, it's a good idea to put some emphasis on trying to be a better parent, because, you know, we don't just have it instilled in us and ingrained. Exactly. So one thing now, just all these different conversations, I want to ask you, Mr. Dillard, and I would say, so I want to ask you this question before we go on. So what would you respond
to somebody, like you said, about the things to occupy young people's times? Like, what would you say to somebody who says, well, in Martinsville, we do have a Y. I don't know if it's open. Yeah. They say, well, we do have a Y. We've got multiple gyms. I know we have at least have near the Y, we've got a park with like 2-3 basketball courts. So what would you say if someone said, well, we have those things, but we're still seeing a lot of problems?
I would say that I grew up in Sandy Level, and from Sandy Level to the Martinsville YMCA is a 25-30-minute drive.
Yeah.
So you're asking my single mother who works to drive me to Martinsville, drop me off with a bunch of other young men, leave and go home and come back and get me in a couple hours. That's a disaster.
Okay.
You know, I would say that, you know, I don't know if we have like a public swimming pool. You know, I know we have some here and there, but, you know, in different parts of the county.
Right.
I can't think of any real outdoor basketball courts that we have. You know, we do have, and there's a lot of good stuff in Martinsville and Henry County. So I don't want to say we don't have a lot of things, but we could use more and more opportunities, you know, for the youngsters. Okay. Even, and I'm speaking, and if anybody get upset with me, I hate it, but even like Parks and Rec,
right.
You know, they cut off, you know, their sports at like 13, 14. So when I get to high school, if I don't make the high school team, I can't play a sport. So, right. You know, it would be nice if there was a league for those kids to play in, because those leagues go for 2 or 3 months. So that's 2 or 3 months, you know, for 4 years that those kids who are not involved in sports are home with, you know, not a lot to do. So right. I would say that, yes, we have some good things to do in Martinsville, Henry County. A lot of them are catered to the adults, but we could definitely use more activities, you know, for our youth and make it more accessible to every community.
Right. And when you said that, you know, my reaction, things that are catered to adults, I think a lot of things that are catered to adults always have to have a bar. That doesn't make sense to me, because that was one of the things that we talked about. It might lead to a little bit more. So I want to make another comment. You know, we've got 2 State watching, and the YouTube audience too.
Okay.
So I just want to make a comment. You know, glad to have you on. You're being very polite, and you've made 2 comments where you said, you know, I hope that wouldn't bother anybody. This is why we're having the conversation, because we want people to be able to stay civil, right?
Correct.
But be able to have these free conversations. And so with him saying his statements about, I think this would be very conducive, like the way that you said it. You know, you said, if I can, you know, go into this part. So it's fine.
Yeah, and I say that because I'm not speaking as an expert.
Right.
And it's my opinion, and I haven't, you know, because the questions are coming to me, I haven't done the research, but I don't know. Like, I know we have, you know, some outdoor pools, but, you know, you look on the lower end of Axton, a kid has to either go to Eaton or come to Martinsville or Collinsville or somewhere just to go swimming during the summer. You know, wouldn't it be nice if there was a swimming pool on that end of the county and kids could spend their whole summer day swimming, you know, versus at home doing
unsupervised.
Yeah, absolutely.
Unsupervised.
Absolutely.
So, Mr. Dillard has already said multiple things that I think that we would all agree with. You know, the things that would be problem producers, like we said, some of these things are symptoms. We're trying to get to the real problem. A big thing that he has said is about the parenting and supervision. So we do have phone lines up. Anybody in the local community, if you had a comment or question for Mr. Dillard, you know, this is a Bible broadcast, so we're fine to take Bible questions also. We just want to be able to gather up the conversation. So, Mr. Dillard, I would like, you know, with what you have presented, I'd like to pick your brain on what I think would be the best solution, and I want to have your take on it. So, I think, you know, I work in Danville. Okay. And so, with the Danville Church of Christ. And a couple years ago, I don't know if you knew this, Danville actually broke its murder record for a year that had been in place since the 70s. So It was like 2017, 18, around there. Man, we were having it rough in Danville. And a lot of people were saying, build more rec centers. And so I said, we've already got like Boys and Girls Club, we got a Y, we've got multiple parks that have things going on. It's in the city, so like you said, where you were out towards the, you know, in the county.
Correct.
These kids were in the city, and I said, we've got these things going. They're still having a problem, and this is where I think the real solution is going to be. I think that the Bible truth and God's real true religion, and like you said, it is going to have to come from the pulpit, hit the parents, and the parents are going to have to spend more time with their kids. So how much do you think religion plays into it? Is it the answer, or do
I think so.
Okay.
I mean, I think that, and I'm going to say this from multiple angles because we're dealing with a wide variety of an audience. I think people, because you have folk who don't believe in religion, but I think if those folk would take a look at religion, there's nothing in religion that promotes hatred. It doesn't promote violence. Right. It doesn't promote anger. In fact, religion tells you, things like, slow to speak, slow to anger, quick to listen. Like, whether you believe it or not, if you would take that philosophy, I'm upset with you, so I'm going to be, slow to speak, slow to anger, but I'm going to listen to you. We're probably not going to have a violent act. Love thy neighbor as thyself.
Right.
If I love you as much as I love myself, and if I love myself, we're going to be okay.
Yeah.
So I do think that, religion, I think we have to not overuse religion. We have to use the principles, the concepts, until folk are ready to receive it. It's like anything else. Mm-hmm. That's why the Bible talks about going from milk to meat. Okay. Because we can't feed a baby meat. That they're going to choke, they're going to die. So we have to not, walk around and, handing everybody a Bible and quoting scripture, because that, that turns people away. But if we can use those religious concepts and those religious thoughts, maybe they realize, hey, you know what, he's a good Christian fella. I want to, get to know a little more about that. Okay. But when we push religion down people's throat, I think sometimes.
Is that how you meant overuse it?
Overuse it, okay. Yeah. We're just, everything is, you meet people and it's, you ask, how are you doing? Well, hey, I'm blessed and highly favored, and the Lord is, some people like, it's a little bit different.
Yeah. Do you know, I don't say that.
Well, I'm not saying you do, right. And I'm not speaking to you.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm just saying in general, I think oftentimes, like anything else, I mean, we can be zealous about something, but we can push people away.
So I got to ask you, Mr. Dillard, you're on, I mean, it takes something to come out, you're on television. Do you mind, like, if I ask you some pointed questions about religion, like I'm saying from a young person perspective, in the way that you just said that, you say to somebody, how you doing? And they say, well, I'm blessed and highly favored. Well, what does that mean? You know what I'm saying? So this is my question. I think this as a young person, do you think that churches are actually failing young people because there's so much emphasis on entertainment rather than education?
I think that's two different questions.
Okay. You answer however you want.
I think, entertainment oftentimes draw people in, and that's part of what we should do as a church, is to draw people in. And if that brings the kids into the church, at that point, it's our job to give them, the religion. And so, and the first part of that question was, is religion failing our youth?
Yeah.
I'm not going to say religion is failing our youth. I think it's just, religion is just like school. It's just like jobs. It's just like anything else. If the wrong people are leading it, it could fail kids. Okay. And I wouldn't say that religion itself is failing kids. We just have to make sure that, the right people are presenting religion, and we have to, within the religious organizations, we have to get out of Baptist versus, Methodist. We're all trying to get to heaven.
That was going to be my next point, where, as you said earlier, about if you're talking to a non-religious person in the first place, I think, honestly, Mr. Dillard, that my generation, and I don't think that it's exclusive to my generation, but I can speak for my generation, by and large, they think it's a joke, and it's because of all the sectarianism of Catholic, Baptist, Methodist, and it's all the division. They're not teaching the same. They don't work together. A lot of what, it's not just legit, like I'm saying, you once a year have a Sunday where y'all swap preachers. That's not working together. That's just like a little token thing that we do. So,
and I'll say the thing we have to also realize is that we have to be honest. Like, I think that's a area where we haven't been honest. Like, religion, there's been a lot of crime committed in the name of religion, throughout American history. So we have to also look at people, read that, they hear that, but we push that stuff to the side, and we have to acknowledge that religion has not always been used for the right purpose. Right. And we have to let people know that, and be honest with them. Yes, people have misused religion, but it was that person, is not the religion. But we push that stuff to the side and won't, always talk about it.
Right. Well, I agree with that it is certainly, and I think that's why a lot of people in the community would not understand up front why we are so outspoken against things like that. The Catholic Church, they had a lot of sexual predatory acts going on. Independent fundamental Baptists, very widespread. We were covering that. And the way that you said that was, and I would like to say this too, you said having the right people doing the job, qualified, there are qualifications to being a pastor in 1 Timothy 3, so having the qualified, but I would say a lot of it is like you take a Catholic cardinal or priest. Locally, he's not going to have anybody to report to. So a lot of it is so confusing to the community, and so we're trying to be outspoken against false religion, man-made religion, because people look at the mess and they just say, I can do this on my own.
Yeah. And I hear the angle you're coming from. I'm speaking of things like, back in the day, KKK was a Christian organization, and look at the crimes and atrocities that they committed under the guise of, we're Christians.
Right.
Like, so when you tell, that's why sometimes you see...
They would misuse the Bible.
Yeah, they would misuse the Bible. So I was, speaking from that perspective, and we have to realize that happened, for centuries in America, and it was, they burned crosses in yards, as a religious symbol. So we have to really, and with religion, with race, we as a country, it's like we have these family secrets in America, and we keep them quiet. We've got to discuss these family secrets, because if, let's say, somebody's been going to church all their life, and then they realize all these things that have been kept from them, it's like, whoa, wait a minute, I didn't know that. Same thing with in school, we teach history. Oftentimes we leave out the women and the African Americans and the Hispanics. Then kids find out later about it. They feel betrayed and feel like the school system let them down, so they lose that trust in the school system. So we need to, put all that stuff out there and be honest and open about it. And I think that would be one thing that would help the cause of religion, because a lot of people turn away from religion once they find out what has been hidden from them.
Well, I agree with that. Yeah. And that's exactly what we're doing. Is I have conversations with a lot of people about religion, and their common answer is, I didn't know that. Yeah. Like the fact of, whether it be Methodist, Baptist, or Presbyterian church, those aren't in the Bible. Mm-hmm. The Bible never speaks about those. So when you say that to a grown person and they're going there, they often say, I didn't know that. Things like the sinner's prayer, it's not in there. So another thing about the, and you really said a lot of things in there that I would like to tag on. So what about young people? This is my angle, because I think that religion, God's religion, New Testament doctrine, I think that's the key. And if you're fine with it, I'd like to ask you these questions. So I think going to jail is bad. I've never been in jail. My dad went to jail when he was young. One of my best friends spent time in jail. I don't want to do that. So I think that people have that in the back of their mind. If I get caught, I'm looking at doing some time. Do you think that as far as young people go, everybody's gonna die? Mm-hmm. You may not die a young person, but everybody's gonna die. Do you think that people don't have a concept of eternal hell or heaven these days? In their decision making, do you think it's there?
That's a tough question. Yeah. I think that we have made heaven very easily attainable. Meaning that, you can hear people speaking and talking, and, they're putting everybody in heaven. And I think that from that perspective, it can make it, you don't have those fire and brimstone sermons that people used to preach back in the day, and, tell you what hell was going to be like, and, what it's going to feel like. You don't hear that as much. So it may have, this thing may be taken out of it. Right. So that's a difficult question.
And I don't even really want it to become this thing where, if you're going to be a real Christian, I don't think that it becomes this overbearing thing, but I think that it's become, like you said, a lot of it's not being taught. I think it's just something that doesn't go on being talked about. And really, that's one of the things that I haven't I haven't heard be discussed in some of the recent things that we have going on. Whoever it is, you know, like you were saying, it could look like this person doing X, Y, Z, these things of violence against their neighbor. Hardly ever do people bring in eternal consequence. You know, there's got to be some eternal consequence in that.
And unfortunately, a lot of those guys who get involved in, say, an act of violence, since that's what we're focused on, they'll get to jail and then they find religion, you know, and they'll come out oftentimes a changed person. And I think that we have to help them find that religion before they get into trouble. Because, you know, I've seen a lot of guys go to jail, get out, and they're, you know, saintly, you know, afterwards. But it's unfortunate they had to go through 10, 15, 20 years in prison to, you know, find that new lifestyle.
Right. So with that even being said, I have some quotes that I would like to ask you about. So one thing, I don't know if you are aware, they just had a meeting on Fayette Street, I think it was at the Sportsman's Club. Did you get to go to that?
I did.
Okay, yeah. All right. So I don't know if Malvester Muhammad got to come. I don't know any of the ins and outs.
Okay.
How did you feel about the meeting?
You know, I think anytime you can get people together
Okay.
and have a conversation, I think it's a great thing. I think it's always the possibility of the beginning of something big. And, you know, you have to commend a guy like, you know, Chad Martin for wanting to get people in a room together to have conversations and where people felt free to express themselves. I think it, you know, you evaluate that down the road, you know, once you see what, you know, what's going to happen next.
Right.
Yes.
So some of the things that you said about the right people doing it, and I think that we would both agree, qualified, because you're going to make a mistake.
Correct.
You know, even if we say the right people, they're going to make a mistake at some
Exactly.
point. But I would like to ask a question with, you know, earlier you talked about the KKK. I don't know if you know, we debated against the KKK on TV, like saying openly to the two states, the KKK has for a long time misused the Bible. The Bible does not condemn, you know, a black man wants to marry a white woman.
Correct.
If they're eligible as far as biblical standards, the skin color doesn't matter.
Exactly.
So we were hitting that hard, but we've also had debates with Malvester Muhammad, who's with the Nation of Islam. And it is a religion that really circulates inside the prison system, or has in the past. Do you think that the Nation of Islam is helping things as far as, like you said, the right people, the right religion? Is that helping any of the tension inside the community, or do you actually think that that type of mindset is actually bringing us backwards?
I heard this quote just the other day.
Okay.
And somebody got into the debates about religion and Muslim, Christian, this and that. And the comment was, if a man is an alcoholic, a drug addict, or abuser, or whatever they might be, if they find something that changes his or her life, I'm all for it.
Okay.
If somebody finds something and all of a sudden you're no longer a threat to the community, you become an upstanding citizen, you know, that's up to you and your God as to whether you're going to end up in heaven or hell. But if I don't have to worry about you hurting me or my family, or if you're in my family and I don't have to worry about you getting high or drinking or abusing somebody, then I commend you for making those changes. And I wouldn't dare say if somebody, you know, became a Muslim and their lifestyle became better, my argument wouldn't be, well, you need to be a Christian. Okay. You know, because I'm more concerned about, you know, my focus is that you need to get, you know, those things fixed first. Okay. And, you know, if at some point, you know, Christianity becomes your way of life, you know, great. Yeah. But, I hope I'm saying that clear.
Well, I think we're saying two separate things, because the way that you said that was, if it helps them clean up their life. Correct. That's one thing. Correct. Whereas I would be saying, like I said a moment ago, the eternal destination part. So I think that's going to be a problem.
And I think that sometimes the issue could be like, you know, while we're pushing Christianity on that person, we're missing the chance to get them off of drugs. Now, once they get off of drugs, they get off of alcohol, if, at that point, now we can have some religious discussions. And if they see that Christianity is the way of the truth, the way and the light, maybe they make that change. But I think that people have to get to a point where we can even have discussion. I can't sit in a room and talk to somebody who's strung out on drugs about whether you want to be a Muslim or whether you want to be a Christian. I've got to get you to the point where you're off of drugs first.
Yeah, can I say that we wouldn't do that?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we recognize you're working with your audience, I'm going to be talking to that person, just like you said about we need to put in these small steps
Correct.
that are manageable, but they will manifest in bigger gains.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I recognize that.
Yeah.
But just the idea of, I have had direct encounter. They had a Martin Luther King Stop the Violence March in Danville a couple years ago. And so my thing was, I was talking to different people in the crowd when we were there, and I came upon one young man, and I asked him, I had the book with me at the time, Message to the Black Man, and so I asked him his thoughts about it, and he kind of leaned in, he said, I think you're a devil because of your white skin.
Oh, wow.
And I said, because I didn't know that was coming. And I said, like the book says. And he said, well, you are what you are. And so this is just a quote out of the book. This is Message to the Black Man. And so he says, it's towards the back of the book, he says, what are we going to integrate for? And then he said, that would just ruin our families, and it's against the divine law for either side to integrate in such ways. So honestly, I'm telling you, Mr. Dillard, from my perspective, I knew about the meeting at the Sportsman's Club. My dad did too.
Correct.
There were some people who would have liked to have brought my dad.
Correct.
But they said at the time that wasn't allowed. But I think it's counterproductive to have Malvester Muhammad, who full-fledged believes these type of statements. In the book, it also, Elijah Muhammad gives some very derogatory statements towards Martin Luther King that I don't agree with. I'm sure you don't either.
And what we have to be careful of is to put like a Malvester in a group and say that's bad, but we're okay with stuff like what happened at the Capitol, because there are people who think that was okay. And we've got to realize that it's not black, it's not white. People have their views and their beliefs. And as far as what happened at the Sportsman Club, I think sometimes as an African American male, we're doomed, and excuse me, hopefully I can say this, we're damned if we do and damned if we don't. Because if we don't get together, then they don't care. If we do get together, then it's they excluded folk. And I think that sometimes you do have to, if you and your family have an issue, you might have a best friend, but it's like, hey, you can't come over tonight because me and my family have to get this worked out before we can take this out into the community. And so I think we have to, think about those things. And my goal is never division. So I'm never going to bash somebody from another religion. I'm not going to bash somebody, who different race. I may put my points out there, but it's not to bash. It's to, maybe get people thinking. Yeah. Because I think that's all we can do. Right. And I think
I'm all about changing minds.
But once we get into bashing, I think the changing minds become difficult, because if you're bashing me, why should I even listen to you? But if we can debate back and forth, and because people's mindsets are rooted from years and years and years and years and years. So my 10-minute conversation is not going to change your mind. Yeah. But if I can sit and talk to you and, we get to know each other better, maybe at some point something that I say clicks.
Right.
But if we become antagonistic towards each other, it's never going to click, because I've already blocked out everything that you have to say, because I know, you're trying to sell me something and I'm not in the mood to buy that. So I believe in unity, and I believe that, it's salvation is about what you believe. And I believe that we all have to get out, work out our own soul salvation, as folks say. And, as a minister, you put the word out there, you draw people. Some people get it today, some people will get it tomorrow, some people may not get it until they're on their dying bed. But, I do believe we have to be careful of, seemingly creating division, and that's why I can't say that, Malvesta or somebody else, is what they're doing is right or wrong. It's, that's their way, that's their choice, and that's how they feel they have to reach the people that they're trying to reach.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, like you said, the division, we're trying to fix division on the religious end, which I would say feeds into the community. I think a big part of the problem with, my generation, I think a lot of laws can be put into place, and this is a little bit of what you said earlier. If our hearts haven't been educated, like you said, to love your neighbor, I don't think amount of laws is going to get in the way.
And I think, when we start promoting that my way is best, it becomes a little self-righteous because that means I'm right, you're wrong, and you need to become like me. And I think that can become a little self-righteous, and that's not the Christian way. The Christian way is not self-righteous. It is it's here. This is what the Bible says. This is what's happening, but it's not to like I say, to promote that self-righteousness. And we have to be careful of that.
Yeah, I hear you on that, because a lot of people would say, well, what makes your church better than my church? And I always tell people, I do not have a church. I'm talking about the Lord's church that you read about in the Bible.
Correct.
So one thing too, like I said earlier, I just would like to plug, because we always have invited preachers to come on and have conversations with us. And, like I said, with the debate against the KKK, that's a pretty entrenched mindset. Like, if you're going to say, hey, publicly, I'm in the KKK, man, you're in it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So after our debate that we had with the KKK, we actually convinced the Grand Wizard to change his position on white folk and black folk marrying. He said, I can't say that's wrong anymore. So I think that we can make headway. I think I feel free to allow people to press their point. I don't shout. Like when I'm having these back and forths with people. I've had people shout over me. It goes that way. I just put up with it. I think if we're really trying to make headway, that's what we do. But I think this has been fantastic, Mr. Dillard, for people to see, us talking, to know that we can do this. I know that there's going to be some stuff I said tonight. You're not going to agree with it, stuff you say, but we're talking. And that's what we want to have more, people in the community. I think right now it's getting worse, because so many people are like, hey, stay away from me. They're worried about getting sick. And I think one of the things that has done is we're talking less. So, we're thrilled that you would come out tonight. It's 9 o'clock at night. We really appreciate you coming out, having the conversation with us. It's a shared interest. We don't want violence being done to anybody. We want good for the next generation. You said points I can very much get behind. Parents need to be spending time and energy with their kids. So that's fantastic. So this, what we're going to do right now for our community, I would invite you to stick around. We'd like to get to visit, but if you got to go, that's fine. We have just a few minutes left. We got another guest that's going to come on. Y'all have seen him before. It's Ian Young. He's going to come on, carry on a little bit of the discussion that we've had. Before you go, Mr. Dillard, we'd like to give you this book. We give it free for everybody. That's Muscle and a Shovel.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Sometime I'd like to buy a copy of your book.
Yes, sir.
If you got some. I know it's on Amazon.
Yeah, you can go on Amazon. And for those who don't know the Sandy Level community, you can actually YouTube.
Okay.
It's called Two Sides of a Town.
Okay.
And it's a 2-part documentary that Irvin Wilkerson created, kind of gave him that. We worked together on the ideas of it. My nephew Deante did the vocals in the background, but it gives you all the history of Sandy Level up until about 2010 or 11.
Okay, say the name of it again.
Two Sides of a Town.
Okay, and you can see it on YouTube.
You can see it on YouTube. Two Sides of a Town.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right, well, we got people, I'm sure they're going to check it out.
Okay.
I'm a local. My family's up in that area, so I'll check that out. Appreciate you coming out.
See you on the golf course.
Yes, sir. I'll do that.
I'm working on that drive.
Yeah, me too. Mine is my hook.
Oh, man.
So I'll see you out there.
Yes, sir. Take care.
You have a good night. Appreciate you coming on.
Have a great night.
Okay, everybody. Hey, that's what we're after. That's what we're looking for. We want people to be able to talk about I don't know which way you want me to go, but Ian's going to come in. To have these conversations, you don't have to get ugly. And so we were fine with that, calm, everything's good. What we're going to do now, this is Ian Young. Ian Young is from California, but he's been living here a couple of years now. He is a Christian. He's a member of the body of Christ. And so what we would basically say, Ian is proof of content of what the Bible can accomplish. I'm very, very conscious of what Mr. Dillard said, my way. This is not Caleb Robertson way. Because obviously, right, Ian is way over out in, y'all, that's the opposite sides of the country. Redondo Beach, California.
It's hard to get further.
Yeah, from Martinsville, Virginia. And the same Bible is working on Ian. Ian is reading his Bible. So I think that probably by now a lot of people know about like you going through the Dream Center. And even before getting to the Dream Center, you were studying your Bible while you were doing your actual jail time.
That's right, yeah. I hit jail, and one of the things that jail is really good for is it forcibly separated me from the community that I was in, where I was committing all of my deeds, and from the people that had come to see me in a certain way.
Yeah.
And it gave me plenty of time to actually think about, just one, sober up. I was able to start thinking straight, and then after I started thinking straight, I started thinking about the things that I was doing. And I remember there was a landmark kind of moment when I was in jail. I think I'd been in there for, people in jail, they do a lot of talking. They have time to talk and talk about their lives and talk about the things that they believe. And I remember that a man said something that to me, even to my ears, seemed a little bit outlandish, some belief that he held that. But I knew that he had kids, and I almost said to him, would you tell your child that that's how they should see the world? And before I said it, I realized, would I tell my daughter to think of the world in the way that I have been thinking about the world up until this point? And I had to tell myself no.
Yeah.
And when I said that to myself, when I realized to myself that I wouldn't tell her to look at the world the way that I was looking at the world, I realized that maybe I didn't actually believe the things that I professed to believe about the world. And that started me down the track to investigating the Bible, really.
Okay. So what do you think, he's saying opportunity, and really I think a lot of people would not even like, if you presented that idea to someone else about saying, well, in order to get on the right track, maybe we're going to have to separate from a few people.
Yeah.
They would not like that.
Well, that's going to be, at some point you have to realize, I think, that it's a good idea for individuals to start thinking about the fact that not everybody is going to accept help when it's given. And sometimes conditions have to be put in place in order for any headway to actually be made. And I hear a lot of suggestions being made about how individuals might be helped. And it usually has
Moses said, let me see thy way. Moses wanted to follow God. He wanted to because their deeds were wicked. When the light came, Jesus.
He always seeks to do the will of God. And so we got into a little discussion about that. And the reason that he is able to leave a program like that is supposed to be faith-based and Bible-centered with that kind of ideation is because he's been listening to man-made spins on it.
Yeah.
It's not coming right out of the book. It's basically this idea that as long as you do things with a generally positive feeling in your heart about God, he's going to be okay with you.
So, I mean, do you feel like you're a Christian, I'm a Christian, we're working with the community. Do you feel like our hands are tied when at one moment, I think that was an honest statement. I agree with what he said. Mr. Dillard said that some folk have made heaven too attainable. It's like you can do whatever you want. There's no sense of moral obligation and responsibility. So I'm with that. But it seems like the moment that we start saying some religions are wrong because we're worried about that, it's like, wait a second, you don't get to come in here doing that. Yeah. So, I mean, is that what you've experienced?
You mean as far as heaven being too attainable?
Well, that idea, but then the moment you start trying to communicate otherwise, it's like, you need to slow down.
Okay, well, so one discussion that I remember having with, there's a satellite recovery home that's associated with the same place, but now it's in Texas. Mm-hmm. And I had a conversation with the guy running the place about this very issue. Are we going to be concerned with whether or not the people in your program are actually getting what the Bible says, or is it just going to be sort of, there's a general idea about God, and we're not going to try to get too specific about what's correct teaching, what's false teaching, what are true and beneficial ideas, and what are false and harmful ideas. And his statement was something to the effect of, well, they're coming in here and they have certain problems, and we have to deal with those. And I told him I understood that. You guys said something similar between yourselves when Mr. Dillard was here. The only thing is, when you're talking about a church or you're talking about a program where individuals are coming and they're supposed to be seeking help, they are already coming with the notion that there is something wrong and I need guidance. And so I just do not understand why you would waste somebody's time instead of giving them the truth up front. It just winds up being, you get used to a certain cadence, and then if you try to change it later on, it's like, hold on, I was doing fine. I was making, progress, and I don't really want to hear about these
if they're coming to the building, right, if they're seeking out the religious crowd, they recognize there's a problem. So why not take advantage of it?
Right.
Like if you got open mind, right? So we've got about 9 minutes left. So one thing that we would like to communicate with everybody, this is what the YouTube channel looks like. Ian was seeing this all the way out in Redondo Beach, California. We've got people watching in Alaska, Florida, all over the place, Iowa, different places like that. So I would like for people to really, I know you believe it too, religion is going to be the thing that fixes America's problems. Any country's problems is going to be real Bible, I'm saying Jesus, the Son of God religion, not just any religion, but it's going to have to be real authentic New Testament from the Son of God. So when people hear that, I feel awful because I think that they're tying us in with they think that we're just these crazy snake handlers. They think that we're, trying to make some money off the community. I'm opposed to that stuff, guys, out in the community, just like y'all are. This religion is not about funding a preacher's Cadillac fund. But I'm saying this, you speak to them, Ian, like you said, you're in the streets, California, you do your time, you go through a rehab program, and then you find yourself all the way out in Virginia.
Yeah.
Is it overly, I'm saying to people, they think if they get linked up with us, they're like, this is going to be, have we slipped you secret information? It's like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Is it overly culture shock, or is it just like these are good basic principles?
They're good basic principles, and I have to say that I feel like I was particularly fortunate because when I was reading in jail, it's like nobody was telling me what to think about it.
Yeah.
I was just reading what the book said. And then when I got out, I started looking for what the book was talking about in the world. And before you know it, I was looking at Church of Christ material, and then I wound up seeing what does the Bible say, and I realized this is the picture that I've been getting from this book. Yeah. And I know that not everybody has necessarily that opportunity. Instead, they start off with people basically telling them what to think.
Yeah.
And they're lucky if they ever actually get into the book.
Yeah. Well, would you say, for yourself, though, you had the time and nobody telling you, but that doesn't mean that you had zero baggage, though, right?
Oh,
like
no, yeah.
Religion baggage.
Yeah. So my impression of religion was basically, it was very different than what I was actually getting from actually reading the book. Like, many of the things that we see being promoted as far as how to talk to people, how to make a difference in your community, are not being followed by religious organizations today. They're actually being spoken against.
Yeah.
So if the idea, I don't see how somebody can say that they're representative of a religious organization and claim that they believe that the Bible has the truth, and then make the statement that as long as somebody's doing okay with this other ideology over here, meaning they're not a danger to somebody else, that's good enough.
Yeah.
I don't see how that's going to be something that generation over generation actually leads to what God would desire for his people.
Right. And I would say, too, that a lot of people who are not a real Christian themselves cannot, I don't think that they could accurately document just how much influence has been projected onto them from family members, friends who are Christians. You know, it's like they would say, well, I just don't see the value, but I think a lot of times they are living with a little bit of the value, they just don't recognize it. So, you know, everybody that's watching tonight, even as an individual, I like the way that you said that about your Bible study. There was nobody telling me what to think. That is our big thing. You read the Bible and you take it for what it says, and you don't have to have like a coach along the way. And, you know, and it's the thing too, I think that people think in the local area, and some people who watch on YouTube, they have this idea about, they might say, yeah, but you wouldn't have come to those conclusions if you hadn't talked to Caleb or Johnny Robertson first.
Yeah, well, that's clearly not the case, because I recognized it in the world after I saw it in the book. So,
right.
And I don't know if individuals do have the misconception, and if they do, like, I would hope I could clear this up right now. When the talk about, I think that maybe people have about the Church of Christ, this conception that, we just think we're right, and we are really rooted to a particular viewpoint, and there's no way we can be moved.
Yeah.
I can say that since I've been out here in Virginia, I have discussed and rediscussed and gone over from different perspectives many doctrines that individuals would say are basically fundamental. You just don't go back and question those things. And consistently, we're having conversations where we're examining and re-examining, and our understanding gets deeper, and we have conversations about what we see the same and what differs, and we work on those things. And the result is greater unity all the time. And it's not this environment where we're being hostile with one another, or we're angry with one another if we're not lining up on every nuance. It's a fantastic environment to grow in.
Right. And I think the way that you said it too, again, about it's not this thing where we're just solidified and we are right. I mean, we all share this mindset to where we say, well, the Bible is right.
That's it.
I believe the Bible, but I may have to do some adjusting to get more in line. I think that's where a lot of people miss where we're coming from. We don't have this thing about, I know of a story where a man tried to get up and deliver a sermon. He was stopped halfway through, and like halfway through, the guy says, well, what's up? Someone from the audience, they said, well, that's not Baptist doctrine. And he admitted, he said, I had no intention of coming in here just teaching Baptist doctrine. He said, I want to talk about the Bible. So I think that what we're discussing tonight is fantastic for the community. So let's talk about another point. We've only got just a few minutes left. Do you feel like there's any stigma? Like, folk know your history. Do you feel like there's anything that you're having to move past? Or are you just in the Lord's church?
No, just in the Lord's church.
Yeah.
And that's one of the beautiful things about being in fellowship with folks that you really enjoy being around. It's not work to be around one another.
Yeah.
And we get to see each other every day on a daily basis. So it's not like people are looking to my past to try to evaluate who I am in the present. It's like we're always around each other, we're always talking with one another, we're always working with one another. And so, people know who I am now.
Yeah.
It's not this thing where I'm constantly apologizing for my past, or I'm not being taken seriously because I had serious issues before. It's, people talk a lot about the new creature aspect.
Yeah.
Well, I'm living differently, and people treat me the way that they see me behaving. So.
Well, we would like to encourage everybody to recognize that, the Bible, the Lord's New Testament is about saving sinners. We're works in progress. We collectively we're working there together. And I think that applied, the New Testament is very, very effective. Like we've been saying, love your neighbor, but there's a big aspect of it too about, I'm against the idea of the American dream. You're always chasing a dollar that's on the run from you. Instead, where the Bible would say we be content with what we have, we build relationships rather than gathering up stuff. So for a lot of people, maybe you become cynical about, you did some searching in the past for the real religion of the Bible, and you kind of gave up on it a while. But I think that if you get back in your Bible, you study it for yourself, I think that you can find it. And I think that people can actually see that it is enjoyable. My thing, and it's in the Bible, 1 Peter 5, 8, and 9, life is hard for everybody. That's just life. But somebody says, well, I tried out religion one time and it didn't help me. Nobody says it's going to solve all your problems overnight. No. But you will go to heaven, and that's the thing that we're talking with Mr. Dillard. I think that a lot of people are not getting. So we're local, y'all. I know people are watching in different places. We meet at 823 Starling Avenue in Martinsville, Virginia, the Martinsville Church of Christ, and then the Brethren in Danville, we meet at 120 American Legion Boulevard. Every Sunday, 10 and 11, we've got a whole nother ice storm that they say is coming, so I don't know if we'll get to see y'all this weekend. But we want you to come out. We want you to meet us. We're, personable individuals, and we do love the truth. We love y'all. We're trying to do the best for our community. Thank y'all for being with us tonight. This has been What Does the Bible Say? We'll see you tomorrow night at 8 p.m. live. If we have electricity, we love y'all. You have a good night.
God, which is